hundreds of tests, and the app is still broken. Let that sink in, because while there's so many orchestrations and workflow and open source workflow and orchestration, and people showing you pretty graphics how it's Slop versus here's a methodical process that works really well, I wanted to actually put that to the test. I wanted to see the results, not just the hype. So I built a plan to create a Claude or AGENT.md score, and I took a few workflows, a TDD workflow, a light agentic workflow with review, and a Oneshot using the SDK. And I ran it through rigorous testing over a few weeks and maybe 80 plus experiments, tweaking and adjusting and using all my engineering skills. And the results are nothing like what I expected. So the next 10 minutes can save you days of work. So stay tuned and watch. Let me show you the plan, the execution, and some of the experiments, the results, and I'll open source everything at the end. So please click like and subscribe, and let's get started.
So in order to compare different runs, I need to compare apples to apples. So I created a plan. I used the plan skill. It's an improved plan on the previous TDD. It sends out exploration agents, a bunch of them. It decides, looks at all the code base, looks at boundaries, and then makes up a plan, a concrete plan with acceptance criteria. Acceptance criteria is really important. So let's look. We're going to build something that marks your Claude or Agents.md. And then we have a whole acceptance criteria here and a front end that explains and a PDF export and also a live evaluation. It's going to have code execution in this thing, all right? So it's not trivial. And then each step has a list of the components and files and what's the acceptance criteria for each step. It's not a perfect plan, but you need to make really good plans as you grow and start to use more Oneshot. It helps you lock down what it will do and gives it some boundaries. So this is in essence what we're going to do. We're going to run a Oneshot that's a single agent. It just runs, it takes the plan and off it goes. A dev cycle with a review, it's a lighter one where kind of I merge a lot of each step gets to build its own step however it sees fit. And the last one is a red-green, where first it runs red, builds a test. There are three personas, as you've seen in the workflows before, system architect, SDE, and a test engineer, and so that's really baked. So the TDD workflow is a lot more rigid, but supposed to focus a lot on tests. So what we'll do next is we'll just kick off the three agents, and we'll see how that goes. So after some work, we had some quirks there, but it's all kicked off. I just kicked off all the three agents. They're all running. You can see three local agents all are running. The TDD workflow, the end-to-end, the Oneshot, they're all running in parallel, and off they go in there, building the same app. So we'll get back to them in a little while. So while the agents are running, I want to give you a little bit more background and a little details on what I've built here. So one thing that I wanted to understand, does a TDD workflow, the one I showed 2 weeks ago, work better for agentic workflows? What's the impact of that? The second thing that I experimented along the way is actually using the SDK. The benefit of using K is that it gives you a repeatable process. It has a function called query that basically creates a new and fresh context window with an exact prompt. So you can control what an agent sees. You know where to control the context. And this way you can kick off various tasks, each working on its own fresh context. So that's really important to know. What the downside of actually doing this orchestration and when we really want to control orchestration is that I realized that the context got lost. And you'll see that after the run's finished. But we really need to think about that. That's where I added also Obsidian to actually share context between steps and between runs and to actually have a self-learning loop. And these AIs are getting smarter by the day. Claude Opus 4.7 just came out. So you can actually use all of that to feed that back and let it make a lot of those decisions. So that's kind of what I was trying to build, and I'm trying to compare the three. And the second part is that I'm really curious about Claude.md value, etc. So this kind of hits two nails at the same time. So let's get back and see what's going on with the progress. So as you can see, all the agents are chugging along. One is already in the implement phase. The other one is also in the implement phase. And the agent is running and building everything. The Oneshot agent is running and building everything. So we'll check in with this a bit later on. So as you can see, the job's finished. They ran. The Oneshot took about 7 minutes, 64 tests. The TDD workflow was much longer, 610 before we had 282. Now it's way more. And then the workflow review had a lot of quality gates that returned it back and had fixes. And that added even more tests. So as you can see, this thing generates a lot of tests. And when we scroll down, I've deployed that already. So I want to show you what the results are and what does it look like and how does it work. So we'll jump into that right now and we'll do a live demo of what was built. So now we're going to look at the outputs. This is the Oneshot. It actually did a pretty decent job. If I compare the comprehensive, it gave it an 8.15 out of 10. And if I look at the simple, it actually gave the simple one a better rating. The simple one is very short. It's 40 something lines. You can see it added some notes. It looks pretty good. It added a footer as part of that. It looks like it's functioning okay, but I would say that the comprehensive has a lot more code examples and a lot more context to it. And I think it's a much better Claude.md. So this one did not find the difference between a very comprehensive one with do and don'ts versus just some instructions. So it works. It ran in 7 minutes, which is impressive. Now let's look at the workflow one. The workflow sits somewhere in between. It's a lot more on brand. It actually told you how many the comprehensive versus the basic has. Scoring, it gave it a 77. You could see it did a really nice job. It added, this one actually did the live evaluation. So this is the live evaluation of the tasks. While that's running, I'm going to show you the TDD workflow. You can see it actually does a much better job at explaining what each one does with do and don'ts, a bare minimum, a comprehensive. The API key goes here, which is a little odd place to put it. But let's look at the basic ones. With the C, it's got a 7.5. It's got structure, actionability. It looks like a much nicer UI, all the findings. It's going to run a live evaluation as well. So while that live evaluation is running, this might take some time. It actually executes code while we do that. It's kind of cool because it runs the code and then it's going to evaluate how good did the Claude.md or AGENTS.md affect the results. While that's running, it's finished. This one gave it 100% for this one. So it has logging. It finished and did pretty good. And we can see the test of what it wrote. So it did a pretty cool job at doing stuff. I say one of the weaknesses is that it put the API key somewhere up there rather than putting the API key. This one put the API key next to the evaluation. But if we look at the TDD workflow, it's a little more dispersed. It's still running the 3 tasks and the API key went in the top. I'll go back here and we'll compare. This is a C with the basic. Close that one, that's a mistake. The basic is still scoring. And when we look at this, gave it a 95% for this one. So you can see the scoring is slightly different here. This is a 7.5, this still works. So this one is actually non-existent, it's very low, and a comprehensive a 9.3. We're going to run the eval on this one. The other one got a 95 in terms of compatibility, in terms of how good it followed the instructions. So the comprehensive one has an 84 score. Now the comprehensive had a 77, which we've seen. And now we're going to run the same tests again, or we cannot run the evaluation. Here we're going to run the evaluation. It looks like the TDD and the workflow, once we had reviews, we actually got overall better results. I would say that the amount of tests they've written is a little extreme. When I ran this the first time, because I've played around and run a lot of these loops, I found that the difference between the Oneshot and the full version is not gigantic. And when it does happen, you can easily get the one shot to fix things. I think part of the value is in the core of actually having review gates. And here it's got, as you can see, the middle one doesn't affect it so well. It's actually correct by saying that the workflow is giving it a 48 score. And you can see that the details of the footer, these are a lot more on brand. This one also is a lot more on brand in terms of what it did, and giving out the same colors as my website. So what we do notice is that we do focus the agent down on specific tasks. It does a much better job because each of these steps, it will think through that, it will write the test, it will go into depth. But I would say that it tends to generate too many tests, and those tests do not always verify the results. I've had this break multiple times. So keep that in mind. I would say less orchestration in these days is more. We can compare the code as well. This one is not bad at all. And once I connected all the obsidian between the different versions, I actually got a lot of parity between them, and they all understood and did everything, which makes sense. There is a place to do these orchestrations, but they require a lot of time and focus, would be my assumption. This is not a light thing, and I would let the agents do what they do best. I've had situations in other apps where the Oneshot did such a good job. So as the models improve, we need less of that, but the quality gates are very, very useful to ensure you get what you need.
So after all these experiments, I had another hypothesis that I tried. I tried to create a leaner TDD that limits the number of tests and focus them on the acceptance criteria. I ran that and I also didn't get some conclusive results. The one thing is sure that all the workflows generated a lot more code. And in some ways, they also focused on certain areas more where we could see the UI a little bit better or certain things a little bit better. But overall, the code quality wasn't necessarily better, and in many cases was just a lot more code, just like the tests. So don't believe all these orchestrations. There's a few conclusions. Using the SDK is much better. You get a little bit more repetitiveness and a little bit more structure to the flow. Even for a one-shot, it's good. You can control the context when it gets cleared or not. 2, if you're going to do orchestrations and they do have value, expect to invest a lot of time. These things are not simple to do. They take a lot of experimentation and a lot of time. 3, don't try to be smarter to the model. The models are getting better and better and they can do an amazing job. You can just verify that. 5, the plan is super important. To create a very good and cohesive plan yielded better product, no doubt. So the more your plans are good and commit to your plans, the better the results. And you can use the skills and the workflow that I have for plan. It sends exploration agents that look at the code. And then the last part is you need real truth. The one thing from all the scores is that they varied a lot in variance because there's still not ground truth to what is a good agent file. So those are really key takeaways. I hope this helps. I'm going to continue to experiment and share with you any findings that I find. I'll also open source everything, so please click like and subscribe, and hopefully this brings you value. Until